During the past few weeks, I've tried to introduce to the congregation some things about the book of Psalms. We've done this on Wednesday evening and some on Sunday evening and a little bit on Sunday morning. Today I want us to look at the Psalm 100. It begins in the New International Version with the expression which has an exclamation point after it. Shout for joy to the Lord, all of the earth. The whole idea is very, very important. The Psalms make up the longest book in the entire Bible. I actually went back and counted the pages in my Bible of the Psalms, and then counted the pages of Jeremiah and also Isaiah, two of the longer books of the Old Testament, and the book of Psalms is considerably longer than that. The 100th Psalm is one of the more famous Psalms in the book of Psalms. As we read the book of Psalms, sometimes we admire the poetry, we admire the beauty of the language, but we miss the message that the psalmist has for us. And so it's a practice in reading the Bible rather than a practice in really studying the Bible. So today I want us to talk about what they used to call Old 100 or Old 100. Psalms 100. Shout for joy to the Lord, all you earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before His presence with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is He who has made us, and we are His. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and praise His name, for the Lord is good, and His love is enduring forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. That's the second reading of that great, wonderful psalm. Not many people read the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. In the early part of the book of 1st Chronicles, we have kind of a key to some of the psalms. In 1st Chronicles chapter 6, verses 31 and 32, here's what we read. And these are they whom David set for the service of song in the house of Jehovah after the ark had rest. And they ministered with song before the tabernacle and the tent of meeting until Solomon had built the house of Jehovah in Jerusalem. And they waited on their office according to their order. Well, what does this say to us? It says that a part of the whole thing of the worship around the tabernacle and in the temple was characterized by singing, songs. All through the Old Testament we have the beauty and the wonder of song service, singing to the Lord. You know, in a way, please don't misunderstand me with this, but in a way, it is the song service, only the song service, that all of us participate in, individually, verbally, audibly. Ordinarily, you don't say very much while I'm preaching. When someone is leading a prayer and nobody says anything much, you follow the prayer certainly, but you don't utter anything very much. But in the singing, we together participate with this. And this has been something that God has ordained all the way back into the days of David. And the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles call attention to the fact that they had singers there in the temple. 2nd Chronicles chapter 29, verse 25. He set the Levites in the house of Jehovah with cymbals and psaltery and harps, according to the commandment of David, and Gad the king's seer, and Nathan the prophet, for the commandment was of Jehovah by his prophets. There was a time when they used these instruments of music. There was a time when they used the cymbals and the trumpets and so forth in their celebrations to God. Now things are a little different in Christianity. We have constantly, consistently. We have the idea of singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. This whole idea of the use of songs in the temple worship was very, very important. As a matter of fact, you will notice that what's called the superscriptions in the book of Psalms, these were not part of the Hebrew text, but nevertheless they were added sometime later, and sometime they describe some interesting things. These superscriptions tell us something about the use that was made of some of the Psalms. It even tells us something about possibly who was the author of certain of the Psalms. These festive occasions that the Jews had. You see, Judaism was a religion of great celebration. And these celebrations had kind of two prongs to them. There were celebrations of a religious character, but there were celebrations also of a national character. Because you see, not only the Jews as a people, but the Jewish nation was God's nation. And so they were a theocracy. They were a God-ruled government. That was God's design. And by the way, that was the thing that was upsetting to God when they asked for a king. I'm your king. And they said, oh no, we want a king, just like the other nations around us and so forth. Well, the Psalms were used in these festivals and in these festive occasions. Songs, all kinds of celebration. They did something that I really wish that we did today. The early church did this, by the way. It was called antiphonal singing. Antiphonal singing was where one group within a congregation, or in the temple worship it was this way, one group would sing a certain portion and another group would answer them in song. And they sang back and forth like this. And when Paul talks about this in Ephesians, he says, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. That probably is what Paul had in mind, because this was the way that they sang at that time. So this whole idea of making a joyful sound, a joyful noise to the Lord. Now, some of their celebrations were national celebrations, which were not religious as such, except that they were religious in reference to the whole thing of we belong to God. We are God's people. And so our nation is God's nation. In the book of Esther, we have the establishment of what came to be known as the Feast of Purim. The Feast of Purim was a celebration of the time when the Jewish people were delivered from the wrath of the Persian king. And Esther played such an important role in this, and it's a very interesting story that you read about there in the book of Esther. And the Jews developed a feast out of this in celebration of it. In the intertestamental period, the city of Jerusalem was captured by the Syrians, and the temple was prostituted. It became a heathen temple, and they offered sacrifices of pigs and so forth on the altar. And then when the Jews finally recaptured the city of Jerusalem, they celebrated this. But you had a problem. And that problem was that the temple had been polluted with idolatry. And so they went through a period of cleansing the temple and rededicating the temple. And this was called the Feast of Dedication. And in John, we have the story of how Jesus went to the Feast of Dedication. That's what it was. What is it today? Hanukkah. That's the Feast of Hanukkah. Well, In all of these feasts, the Psalms played a very important role. They sang. They sang to one another. They celebrated in song. And the Psalms, so much of the time, played an important role in those celebrations. Let's look at this 100th Psalm. There are some very, very important things here for us. And this Psalm expands itself into so many areas of our lives, which is kind of, well, we don't think about it very much. Make a joyful noise to the Lord. That's the way the King James Version reads. Others read with the word shout. Shout for joy to the Lord. Well, folks, worship is not a somber kind of thing. Worship is to be exciting. It's to stimulate our emotions. It's to stimulate our bodies. It's to stimulate our thoughts. When we sing, we need to sing with enthusiasm. Just stop and think of what we're singing about. We're singing about the Christ who gave himself for us. We're singing about the joy and the hope that he gives us. That's exciting, folks. At the memorial service, we sang one of Greg's favorite songs. We're marching to Zion. I have heard this song sung, if you don't mind. Come we that love the Lord, and let our joys be known. No, that's not the way that the psalmist would picture this thing. He would picture it as we're marching to Zion. It's an exciting thing. It's filled with enthusiasm. It's filled with life. And we are not dead Christians. We are living Christians. Let's sing the way we need to feel. And by the way, you know, the more we do that, the stronger we feel those feelings. And the stronger we feel those feelings of closeness to God and celebration, the more the song means to us. Oh, he calls on all nations to do this. He talks about not just my personal enjoyment in singing. I really like to sing. I really enjoy that. But that isn't the idea. It isn't just the idea that I enjoy singing and I enjoy hearing the congregation singing enthusiastically and all. That isn't it. What is it? It is that we learn to worship. We learn to praise. We learn the meaning of praise. You know, it's kind of like telling your wife or your child or your mother or father, someone you're very close to, I love you. I love you deeply. I love you. I love you all my life. No, that isn't the idea. It's something that embraces us. It's something that we embrace. And so this whole idea of this joyful noise unto the Lord, or shout for joy to the Lord. Oh, there are a lot of different kinds of songs that we have. Some songs are very strongly devotional. And people think sometimes, well, that song ought to be sung slowly. Yes, perhaps it should. That doesn't take away its enthusiasm. You can sing a slow song. You can even sing a mournful song with enthusiasm, with praise, because our hearts go into it. Some of the songs that we sing, you know, well, I don't particularly like the music. And there are others that I like the music a great deal. Do you know that some of the music that's in our book was written by Mozart? Some of the great music of the world. And then there's some other music in our songbooks written by an unknown person. There are all kinds here. The idea is not, oh, I love this one, I don't like this one so much. The idea is, look at the words and look at the music and how they fit. Words and music need to fit together. And so when we do that and we enter into the theme, it means so much to us. He says, we are his people. We are the sheep of his pasture. Notice this. There is a statement, verse 3. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who has made us, and not we ourselves. Or as another translation puts it, it is he who has made us, and we are his. There's a statement here of monotheism, which is very, very important. Well, you say, yeah, but a bunch of pagans around those people. That kind of doesn't cut with us today, does it? No, there are not very many people that I know of right now who are bowing down to idols of wood or stone or something like that. There are some. But you see, the paganism that was all around the Jewish people, the Hebrew people at that time, that paganism was very strange to us. They did not have a historical revelation from their God. It was wrapped up in mythologies and legends and things like this. And they didn't have a historical Mount Sinai where God came down and spoke to Moses and gave Moses the law and all of that. Or where Jesus Christ walked the hills of Galilee and taught, and where the apostles, real honest to goodness men. It has a historical basis. Christianity does. Judaism did. You see, paganism didn't have that. It was based on myths and legends. Then there's another thing. It's pretty easy to be a pagan because you pretty much live the way you want to. There was no divine revelation. Oh yes, the priests and the priestesses supposedly talked to their gods and so forth. Then they supposedly delivered revelations from their God, but this again was wrapped up in mythology. So if I'm a pagan, I have no real moral or ethical laws to follow. And so the pagans were very immoral. Why were they immoral? Because their gods were immoral too. Their gods committed adultery, their gods committed murder, their gods did all kinds of things like that. And so if I'm going to be like my God, I can live pretty much any way I want to. So it's very easy to be a pagan. That's one reason that the Jews had so much trouble becoming pagans. You know why I said that? Because in our society, we're very close to it. No, not bowing down to idols of wood and stone. But whatever society decides is okay, is supposed to be okay. Society decides that this lifestyle is all right. Okay. Society decides that certain immorality is okay. Okay. Society decides that abortion is all right. All right. And I say, I'm opposed to that. I'm opposed to that. I'm opposed to that. On what grounds, you bigot? Well, I'm opposed to it because the Bible teaches otherwise. That's bigotry. That's bigotry. And so if we don't go along with these things, sometimes we thought I was bigots. No, I'm trying to do what the Bible says. And so this declaration of monotheism, know ye that the Lord, he is God. We need that in the United States of America. We need to go back to the monotheism that the Bible teaches us, instead of the looseness of the morals and ethics of our own country. I wrote something down here that I kind of think of this as I've never heard this expression. It just came to me while I was preparing this lesson. I said, we have a contemporary monotheistic paganism in our country. Monotheistic paganism. I only believe in one God, but He doesn't interfere with anything I want to do. You see, that's the idea. We are His people. We're the sheep of His pasture. And this beautiful, wonderful psalm invokes the blessings of God. It divides itself into two little sections here. They're both calls to worship. He begins by saying, shout for joy to the Lord. And then in the fourth verse, he shifts it just a little bit. I want you to stop and think for a moment about the temple in Jerusalem. It was a massive thing. Oh, the temple proper, the sanctuary, was relatively small, but they had all of these colonnades and all of these buildings around it, beautiful courtyards and things like this. At the Holy Land Hotel in the city of Jerusalem, someone has gone out and laid out the whole temple, actually the whole city of Jerusalem as it was in the first century. And the whole temple area there is just a very beautiful thing. And whoever made this thing made it out of little blocks that are white, and they're about the size of a cube of sugar, you know. And it's really a very interesting thing to see. But when you see the temple, it's described by Josephus, by the way, in a very intricate way. When you see that, and now you see the way the writer is talking about the temple. Of course, the temple in Jesus' day was a different temple than Solomon's temple, and I understand all of that. But the whole idea was that this is the dwelling place for the name of God. And he says, come to it with joy. Come to it with enthusiasm. Come to it with praise in your heart. And then he shifts it just a little bit. In verse 4 he says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Give thanks unto him and bless his name, for the Lord is good, and his mercy is everlasting, and his faithfulness endures through all generations. He invites you in. No, not this structure, not this building, into a relationship with him. He invites you to come and be a part of the covenant people. He invites you to come in and experience the wonder and the beauty and the grandeur of being a Christian, a child of the King. And when that permeates us, when it gets all through us, it makes us so thankful for that which God has done for us. So it says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. When we come together, we need to practice something that gets us ready for praise. I'm getting ready to go to Korea. I leave this Thursday. I won't be back until the 19th of November. I'm going to miss you. I'm really anxious to get over there. I'll be very anxious to get back. That's just the way things are, I guess. The Korean people, even when they go into the little classroom that we have, where we have our lectures and teaching and all, when the Korean people go in there, they sit down and they quietly bow their heads individually, each one, as he comes into the classroom, or she, bow their heads And then we'll pray for just a moment. And then they're ready for the class. You know, I like the idea. I like the idea of saying, I am about to study. I am about to worship. I want to get myself ready. I want to be prepared to praise God, to listen to His Word, to pray to Him, to take the communion. I want to prepare myself. And then, when the song leader announces a song and we begin singing, we sing with enthusiasm. We sing with feeling. We sing with tempo. Why do we do that? Because we are His people. We are the sheep of His pasture. And so He invites us, enter into His gates with thanksgiving and into His courts with praise. Be thankful unto Him and bless His name. For the Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting. And His truth endureth to all generations. If you're not a Christian today, I will say this: you don't know what you're missing. You don't know how wonderful it is to cultivate yourself so that praise of God is a part of your life. Praise of God because God has blessed you with His salvation. You have been baptized into Christ. You have put Him on. You've been raised to walk a new life. And now your life is different. Now your life is dedicated. Now your life is a striving to become what God wants you to be. If you're not a Christian today, we invite you to come forward. Let's stand together, please, while we sing.